This is Grid Live After Dark Chinese Grand Prix. George Russell looking to make 3 consecutive wins, but can his teammate or anyone else stop him? Lewis Hamilton in the second row, but can he steal a win right here for Ferrari? And Oscar Piastri out for redemption after a disastrous Australian Grand Prix. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race After Dark Edition. Joe Samaniego, Nicole Fry from Fans in Focus. Big thank you to all our Patreon investors, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and Nico, our newest investor. Link in the video description to invest in us through Patreon. You can also do super chats, buy me a coffee. We'll thank you on the air and across social media at Grid Network TV, gridnetworktv.com for all the latest articles throughout 2026. And Nicole, 2026, we know we're excited about the motorsport season. Everybody really excited about this race weekend, but right before we got to this race, breaking news from Formula One, the Bahrain Grand Prix and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix will not happen in April due to the conflict in the Middle East and the United States and Iran. We're seeing Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, home of Abu Dhabi, have all been targeted. Qatar and United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, they're going to host races much later in the season. But for Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, they were expected to be the next couple of rounds after Japan. Not going to happen. I think we could all agree this was the right call. But could we see Bahrain and Saudi Arabia at the end of the season with Abu Dhabi?
I think it's a really interesting thought, Joe. Obviously, there is really no confirmed end in sight to this current conflict, which is very unfortunate for everyone. But I think as far as my sources are telling me inside the paddock, we are not going to see a rescheduling of this just yet. I think everyone is really waiting to see kind of what happens, how serious this conflict is going to become, how much it's going to progress in the coming weeks, and overall how much this will affect Formula One as well as countless other series across the world. As we know, we have the World Cup coming up, and there's just lots of different factors in play at this moment. So I think we'll really have to wait and see. But as far as I can tell right now, I cannot foresee any rescheduling in sight for any of these Grand Prix, and it will be very interesting to see how the rest of the season progresses.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the rest of the season and, of course, what's going on around the world is going to play an impact on any potential, I say, because we just don't know reschedule these 2 events. But the other thing I'm a little concerned of is Formula One. It's the pinnacle of motorsports. Everyone could agree with that. It's a global series. No other series like this in any major professional sport where you go country to country for round after round. A lot of travel paths that cross the Middle East from Asia to Europe, they're not going to have longer detours because of the crisis in the Middle East. On top of that, the potential of rising energy prices. We know a lot of countries are tapping into their reserves. Here in the United States, we've been seeing the fuel prices increasing higher and higher, and of course, that could have a chain effect. Any concerns that this could disrupt Formula One, or since F1 is moving towards the biofuel, how could it showcase this technology as a potential option to consumers?
I think had this been a planned, basically scheduling of a highlight of biofuel and its amazing capabilities, I think this would have been a great opportunity to do so. I think really where everyone finds themselves at the moment is the fact that no one was prepared for this. No one was expecting this. We know that this, like all conflicts, is a logistics disaster for Formula One, as well as many other things all across the world. And now it's really going to kind of, I think, highlight which teams have the right connections, which teams have the ability to move things and adjust things incredibly quickly, who have that infrastructure in place to make decisions in those split-second moments when they need to make a call. This just really disrupts so much in the world of sports, and it's really going to be interesting to see how teams adapt. in the future, in the coming weeks, or how they rebound possibly later on in the season if this conflict ends quickly. It's, I think, just a waiting game at this point. Unfortunately, there is no good answer as far as like what this will do in the future.
And you bring up a good point about the teams and how good of connections they have to make these logistical changes. We have Formula 2, we have Formula 3, we got, I mean, Formula E, of course, F1 Academy, many other series that are going to be impacted. MotoGP, which Liberty Media just acquired as well. So it's going to be something where I know we'll see how everything happens. Like I said, there's really no good answer. Definitely, this is something everyone at Grid Tonight, Josh, and everyone will be tuning in and following the news so they can report to you each and every Wednesday. And we have Kobe in the chat room. We won't see Formula 2 again until June. Colton Hunter free to do the Indy 500 if Jonathan Morris let him race an Andretti Honda. He's on site in Arlington this weekend. Yeah, we're going to have a bit of a break with the season with those 2 rounds being gone. And yeah, Formula 2, a long break, June. That's something else. I guess I wanted to follow up with that kind of question for a driver like Colton Herta, Formula 2 drivers. People see them as the feeder step to F1, but these are still athletes, very skilled drivers. Could being rusty after such a long break be a factor for these drivers? I mean, June is quite a ways away.
Yeah, 100%, Joe. I mean, we have almost 8-9 weeks until June, and it is going to be, I think, a challenge for some of these drivers who have to just sit and wait. I think the best possible thing is if they have the connections to get into a car, that is going to be their best option, because they need to use those skills or they kind of start to slip a little bit. And honestly, if they're not slipping in their skills, it's just the mental game of not being on track for a little while and what that does to you. You kind of relax a little bit more. You kind of get used to a different type of lifestyle for a little bit. And then if you have to switch on a dime all of a sudden and just go, and it's so high intensity, it's very high pressure. I think for especially some of our younger drivers, maybe not Colton Herta, but that can really get to a driver very quickly, especially if they're not used to it. So all around, this is a crisis, not just for the world, but also for sports, which is kind of an insane thought.
Yeah, very uncharted territory we're all facing. And of course, we'll be following this right here, Grid Network TV, at Grid Network TV on social media, and Grid Tonight on YouTube every Wednesday. Comment in the channel from Kid Lat 27. Welcome. Well, maybe he might be able to beat a few times by Charles, Kimi, and Lewis. I guess that leads sort of to the top story of this race. George Russell looking to make it a weekend sweep for the Grand Prix and do this again. Last time he did something like this, 2022 Sao Paulo Grand Prix, when George Russell was able to win the sprint and that Grand Prix. If he does this, this will be big, not only because of the points significance, but to make it 2 consecutive Grand Prix wins, something he hasn't done. But starting ahead of him on the grid, his young teammate, Kimi Antonelli, snatching the pole, and what an effort by him. Behind him, though, is Lewis Hamilton, who was very strong in the start of the sprint race. Got around Kimi Antonelli, who had a horrific start, lost so many positions, and in fact, Australia, very similar, just did not have a good start, but he was able to cover. Not so much in the sprint race, still got some points, but not a good day. So we know Lewis Hamilton, he might be thinking, I could get around Kimi, go for the lead. We've seen these intense battles already at the beginning of the sprint race, Australia. Overall, do you believe this could be the best opportunity to beat George Russell?
I do. I think Kimi Antonelli has a lot going for him in this moment. He also has a lot going against him because this is his teammate in theoretically equal machinery. It is going to be very interesting to see how these two kind of battle it out on track. And if it's going to be interesting to see, quite frankly, if Mercedes decides to make any team orders in regards to what happens on track, who gets preferential pit stops, who potentially has preferential treatment when it comes to strategy. These are all questions that early on in the season will come into play, because we know from the past very recent seasons, they kind of make a difference in the outcome of the season. And if the rumors are true and it really is going to be Mercedes against potentially Ferrari, I could see Mercedes wanting to lock things down very quickly, make sure that their drivers know who is in the pecking order and how that pecking order is established. And I think this will be a very interesting kind of test case for them to see how they actually handle all of that pressure, specifically when it comes to that very young driver of theirs, which is Kimi Antonelli. I think he has a lot going for him, and I'm so excited to see how he kind of handles it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to see what Kimi Antonelli could do. If he has a great start, oh my goodness, game on. If between him and Russell for that lead entering the first corner. And what I really like seeing from the sprint race, Nicole, was how that outside lane, you could almost use it like Lewis Hamilton to get around, because if you're on the outside, that following corner, you're now on the inside. You got the advantage. So that was a lot of fun to see that. It could be very exciting to see those two racing each other. But I just know Lewis is he's gonna be anticipating, like, if there's a slip up, I'm gonna jump all over it, try to get that lead. It's gonna be really hard to get away from the Mercedes and get away from the Ferraris, those first stints for the Mercedes drivers. I just can't wait for this race to get going. Of course, with the Mercedes front row, taking a look at the grid behind them, very interesting. You took away the drivers' names. It's literally just a pairing of row 1, the Mercedes drivers, row 2, the Ferrari drivers, the McLaren drivers are in row 3, and Red Bull row 4. Row 5 is when we get the first break of pairings with the Haas and an Audi driver, which, good on Audi. Again, another driver making it into the top 10, looking really good. Overall, does the first few rows show an accurate picture of the team from first to fourth when it comes to their cars? Or is this more because of the track and the history some of the teams have? Like Lewis Hamilton has always loved this place. Ferrari seems to have something going good.
I hate to always kind of be the person on Grid Live who does like the very diplomatic answer of, right now, yeah, absolutely. I think it's only race 2 of the season, and it's hard to really make out what is truly going on with these cars and with these drivers. We've got teams who are brand new and who are just settling in, and drivers who are returning for the first time in a couple of seasons. But I think so far right now, yes, the first couple of rows, especially with the Mercedes, the Ferraris, the McLarens, absolutely showcase which teams are going to be on top, preferably for like the first part of the season. Time will tell, obviously, about what actually happens in the long run, depending on which teams have upgrades, which drivers start to feel more comfortable in their brand new cars with the brand new regulations. But I think this track has a very favorited history among some of our veteran drivers, like Lewis Hamilton, who I think this was his last win, was at the Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai. He obviously loves this track dearly. It's one he knows incredibly well. We also had Norris last season, who said that, one of his biggest regrets halfway through the season was the sprint race at the Chinese Grand Prix. It's something that, like, I think drivers either feel very comfortable or very uncomfortable at this track. There's very little in between. Throw in new cars, new teams, new regulations, and it's kind of just a mix-up at this point. But I think as far as the order of the starting grid goes, it is going to be a very telling start, because if the Mercedes are doing as well as expected, they will continue to do well throughout the Grand Prix. And let's say if the McLarens kind of drop off a little bit, it is going to be very obvious very quickly.
Yeah, it could be a very quick drop. Everything is going to, I think, be changing a lot throughout this race. And we got a lot of folks in the chat room commenting. Thank you, everyone, for all the comments. Starting off with Adam, it would be nice to see the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. There was a lot of people that said that would have been a great alternative, but we know that Portimao had already other race weekends going on. An Antonelli win will prove he was worth all the hype and fast-tracking him to F1. Still have some mistakes to clean up, but that's understandable given how young he is. I feel like, really, Nicole, since the start of this season, he's really shown he was definitely worth it. I think that win is coming.
I do, Joe. I think it's been really interesting to see how quickly he's adapted to the Mercedes like team unit over the past couple of seasons. We know that this was a obviously like very big shoes to fill situation when he decided to come into the team, or when he was invited into the team more accurately. And they must have had so much faith in this young driver in order for them to fill basically Lewis Hamilton's shoes, which is a hard task regardless of how amazing that driver is. I mean, it could have been Max Verstappen and they still would have said, this is a really, really hard position to kind of make up. And he's done phenomenally so far for such a young driver. He's only 19, which I think is crazy to think about, like how truly young he is. Like he just graduated high school last year. And when you really think about it, it's amazing to see how far he has come. It's so hopeful to see how well he's going to do in the future. And I think as well, one surprising factor is that Mercedes has put a lot of time, effort, and money into Kimi Antonelli. So they really want to see him flourish. And I think they're realizing that hopefully with the car they have this season, this is his opportunity to shine. And this is Mercedes' time to kind of rebuild their legacy with him and George Russell.
Yeah, he could build a legacy with Mercedes, make that his team, the face of Mercedes, and 19 years old. I mean, give this kid good equipment, wins, championships. He could really, in my opinion, maybe even say, hey, Mercedes, people think of that team, they're going to think of Kimi Antonelli rather than Lewis Hamilton. Of course, that's very big shoes to fill to do that. Kid Lanton, I'm very excited about this race as well. I still say George Russell might win, but don't count out Lewis Hamilton and Charles and Max Verstappen. And a follow-up from Kid Lanton, I think Kimi will win Canada and Singapore. Canada, I say that could happen. That's a track we've seen first-time winners. Robert Kubica comes to mind. Lewis Hamilton comes to mind. Singapore, though, I feel that's going to be hard. I think that's going to be a track where an experienced driver is going to get that one, Nicole.
I would agree. I think Singapore is really ambitious. Not that Kimi Antonelli can't do it by any means. I think he does have the raw talent, but it is such a technical track. And as well, there is a whole bunch of factors when it comes to the time change. The humidity has been a really big factor for drivers in recent years. There's just a lot to play. A lot at play with Singapore. As far as Canada, I think that's a great place for Kimi Antonelli to have like a debut, like a breakout, absolutely phenomenal drive. It is known for producing, some of the best races we ever have in Formula One. And I definitely think that is a track where Kimi would shine.
A lot of potential to shine in Canada. And of course, Canada, that's going to be a fun race to follow. The place on the schedule is not exactly ideal, but we'll see how that all goes. Everyone, I think, will be talking about the racing. One driver, I think everybody would talk about if he pulls off a win. You already mentioned Lewis Hamilton. Yesterday's sprint race, plenty of action. Looked very racy. Was leading. Felt disappointed he did not get better than third place. But I think compared to where that team was last year, where he was last year, if they said, hey, we got a podium, we're feeling good. I know it's a sprint race, not exactly the same podium count, but still a really good day, and I feel he's really shifted to now be a sentimental favorite by fans. Wanting to see him win, bring it home with Ferrari, one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic team in Formula One. I have to ask, though, fact or fiction, Lewis Hamilton a winning contender today?
Oh, absolutely fact. 100% without question in my mind. Do I think that Lewis Hamilton would have the opportunity to win the Chinese Grand Prix? This is a track he loves. It's a track where he feels comfortable. And I think yesterday, while we did see a lot of unfortunate incidences on track with cars being unable to finish or having to retire early, I do think it means that in the long run, potentially we could see Lewis Hamilton, if Ferrari gives him the right strategy, kind of sneak up on the Mercedes a little bit. Obviously, he and Charles Leclerc have the car, they have the experience. And at the end of the day, I do think that the story of Lewis Hamilton winning the Chinese Grand Prix would be great for Ferrari. And I do think potentially they could give him preferential treatment because of it. Either way, we will have to see, but I do think that he is absolutely a contender that we cannot write off at this moment in time.
Yeah, don't want to write off Lewis Hamilton. I think ever in the chat room, great point. Sentimental favorite because everyone knows the end is near. What a career Lewis Hamilton has had. The sport will miss him when he hangs up his helmet. And I'll be honest, when I was going to sort of age myself, but it just shows us well how long Fernando Alonso has been in F1. Being in a high school and seeing Fernando Alonso come in, winning with Renault, bringing the fight to Michael Schumacher and the Ferrari team, I was just enthused. Then here comes Lewis Hamilton, the young rookie, and I was then more on the Alonso team, being in high school and everything. But I gotta say, Lewis has really earned my respect just for everything he does on the track, what he's been doing off the track, especially 2020. The sport is just going to miss out on such an icon that has done so much. I mean, we saw when Vettel left that void, Lewis Hamilton leaving. I just don't see a driver that has sort of that social following on and off the track, but F1 is getting popular. Do you think that's going to be a really big void that could be filled?
It's going to definitely create an interesting vacuum, Joe. I think right now especially with the drivers that are currently on the grid, we've seen such a dramatic shift over the past couple of years from drivers being able to be kind of these like aloof, larger than life figures to also these drivers who have transitioned into doing a lot of public service and a lot of advocacy within the sport and off the track as well. And I think now we're starting to see the new type of Formula One driver that has kind of emerged, the expectation that you will not only be an amazing driver that can race some of the most dangerous conditions in the entire world, but also off track, you're going to make an effort to do all of these really admirable charitable works, to be a good person, to be a good contributor to society and the motorsports community at large. And Lewis Hamilton really pioneered that way. So whenever he does decide to step back from Formula One, it will absolutely be felt, because his input and his impact on the sport have been so great that for a while, I think Formula One will kind of even potentially forget how to be F1 in this modern age, because he's just created such a big importance for himself. And all of the work he has done has had such a big impact.
Such a huge impact. The Hamilton Commission, another example. And we see him getting more roles outside of F1, ownership role in the Denver Broncos National Football League team. And they had a graphic of a Denver Bronco F1 car wishing Lewis the best of luck on their social media. So it will be I like what you said, a vacuum effect of, okay, we're losing one of the biggest stars. Time for someone else to sort of pick up that mantle. Could be a driver on the grid currently. Could be someone that's in the pipeline, F2, F3, or a little lower. And we know F1, they're putting in a lot of effort to develop drivers, especially F1 Academy. They also want to see a female driver in F1. That'll be a huge moment when that happens as well. So a lot of potential. I'm just really excited to see when it comes to everything going on with F1. I think they're making a lot of right steps for their future. Let's talk about McLaren and their future. And some people say they may have not been making the right steps, depending on who you ask and who's their favorite driver in the McLaren pair. One driver that wants to have a strong, much better race weekend, speak about just having the right step, is Oscar Piastri. Of course, we know the disastrous Australian Grand Prix weekend where just got out of the pits, hit the curb, hit the wall, didn't even get to get on the grid. No points. Then he comes to the sprint race. He gets some points. So he has that. He's not at 0 points, but still a little bit of ground to gain. Starting alongside his teammate. How does he approach this race? Is he going to be conservative, just focus on scoring points because it's the long season, even though we might be down to now 22 races, so 21 left, or be aggressive, get the most, try to win?
Oh, it's a hard battle for McLaren to see which one they will prefer this early on in the season. I think ideally, I would say that McLaren tends to be a little bit more hesitant. They tend to play kind of the safer game. And they tend to want to go more long-term strategy. So I do think they will be a bit conservative in how aggressive their drivers are, not only with each other, given that they're probably going to be battling each other most of this Grand Prix, but also just with the cars out front. I think McLaren is okay taking a step back and playing this waiting game, because they've seen in the past, especially last season, that can work out really well for them. especially when Red Bull was dominating. They were able to kind of make improvements, work with their team a little bit, and then kind of really show all of those improvements on track very quickly and very consistently. And I think they ideally will take a similar approach. Though I will say, I think if we do see a lot of retirements like we did in yesterday's sprint race, I can absolutely see McLaren really pushing for some really aggressive driving on track, just simply to get their points up as quickly as they can. Because like we said in last week's Grid Live After Dark, those points that come really early on in the season do matter at the end of the season, more so than I think almost ever before. And I think McLaren will see the opportunity to get those points as something that is really beneficial for their team overall.
The points matter, and every single point's going to add up. And with the sprint races, I think that's going to be very interesting to see how they add up, because it comes down to single digits. You're talking about the 8 points for winning the sprint, the 1 point for just getting the final sprint position, which Max Verstappen missed out on yesterday. Be interesting to see if Max Verstappen will score points. I anticipate he will, but how big of a struggle will that be? In the chat room from Kid Latin, fact, I could see Lewis Hamilton winning today. He might actually win, I assume, Silverstone, London, Miami, and Italy. You've been to Italy. How huge will that celebration be if Lewis Hamilton wins the Italian Grand Prix?
Oh, I don't know if I have words for how massive that celebration will be. I think one of the most terrifying moments of my life was being on track for that podium celebration. And I truly can't imagine what that would be like with Lewis Hamilton, because when I was there a couple of years ago, it was Charles Leclerc. So it was a Ferrari podium at Monza, and everyone was going absolutely insane in the best way possible. If it was Lewis, I can't imagine. All I can say is that if he were to win the Chinese Grand Prix, the Silverstone, Miami, and one of the Italian Grand Prix, that would be so good, not just for him, but for Ferrari, who have, I think, in recent years really been struggling to kind of maintain their illusion of having this great dynasty within the sport, because they've struggled so much over the past couple of decades. And I think really that would cement their era and their legacy in the modern world of Formula One. And I think really that is what they're after with having Lewis Hamilton on the team in the first place. The entire reason they probably signed him, from their point of view. And I think it would be absolutely phenomenal to see that happen.
That'll be phenomenal. Like, just as someone that only has watched it from the television, when there's a Ferrari win at that race and everyone's on that straightaway, my goodness, and they're all just singing along the national anthem. Nothing else really in sports. Nothing. I mean, not even, like, I know people talk about college football, how they'll rush the field and they'll celebrate, but they're not singing. Well, maybe they might sing the school fight song, especially Tennessee, Rocky Top. Everybody sing that song all the time. But on such a level, such a pride of a nation, Italy, Ferrari, getting Lewis Hamilton a win there will be massive. Another comment in the chat room, and I know we talked about this earlier. Yes, but when are we going to see a female driver in F1? Most people feel like it may never happen at all. It's no secret, F1 is the pinnacle of motorsports. You only have 22 seats, and that just became 22 this year. Takes a lot of resources to get to F1. Takes a lot of competition. Try to be the best in F3, F2, and even then, that's no guarantee. We see drivers like Mick Schumacher, son of 7-time world champion. Bad opportunity, really. I know you got to go for it with Haas when they were not on their top of their game. He's an IndyCar, but he's still a very talented driver. Tony Felix da Costa, Sebastian Buemi, all of them from Red Bull. Not good timing. They're in Formula E. This isn't just a female thing, Nicole. I have to say, this is just something about F1, but I think this is just also what makes the prestige, this old saying, the pinnacle of F1 more true, that it's so hard to get to this level.
I would agree. I think, Joe, you're spot on with the fact that it's not just about the skill of the driver, it's about the timing of it all. Who is retiring, which teams are coming onto the grid, which teams are going to have legacy drivers or, rookie drivers who they actually want. For example, I think a lot of people were really conflicted over the fact that Cadillac chose to have some veteran drivers rejoin the grid, and people were surprised. other people weren't. It really just comes down to the timing of it all. And I think there is absolutely a couple of drivers, especially in F1 Academy, that could do phenomenally in F1 in a couple of years when they've really been given the opportunity to really prove themselves and get a little bit more experience under their belt. And I think F1 Academy does a great job at giving them some of that initial experience, especially when it comes to like media and just the circus that is sponsorship. But in general, it is going to take the perfect storm to get, a female driver in Formula One, though I don't think we're super far off from it. I could definitely see by 2030, 2032, a female driver definitely entering the grid.
Sorry, microphone was malfunctioning. In the chat room, if Kimi can make a great start, he can beat Russell. Kimi caught up to Russell with 3 seconds at the end of Australia GP after a very bad start. I know we mentioned about that earlier in the show. I hope Ferrari can fix their engine. Their weakness is their top speed. And Ferrari says they can fix their engine by June, especially the cancellation of Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. I think that's a good point. I haven't considered that. With such a break, could this be the opportunity Ferrari needs and everybody else to, hey, we need to catch up to Mercedes? Or could it be Mercedes could use this and pull further away?
I think it will really depend on how teams have allotted their resources and their money. Because one challenge that I think we've heard recently in the media with these recent cancellations due to the current conflicts in the Middle East is, what are the teams going to do? Because they've already had things shipped over to those Grand Prix because they were so close on the calendar. People even left supplies in Bahrain because they were going to be coming back so quickly. So it depends on how many spare parts they essentially have, or how quickly they can get those spare parts out of other places, and kind of reshuffle their entire calendar. Because all of this is so well planned out in advance, there is very little room for wiggle room in this equation for many teams. I think the teams that we will see really do well are the teams who have the resources and the experience to make those really snap moment decisions. But I do think some of our newer teams potentially could struggle. But I could see it definitely for Ferrari, who have that home base in Italy, being really well positioned, literally location-wise, to make some of those changes on the fly and really adapt much quicker than some of our other teams who are primarily based in the UK.
That's a really good point, especially just having everything right there. They're not a customer team for the engine like the McLarens are, the Alpines, Haas. A lot of good opportunities for Ferrari to potentially gain ground. In the chat room, Kobe, if the Ferrari engine's weak, then what do we call the Aston Martin Honda engine?
Not good. Not good. That's what we call it.
Not good. You may want to ask Fernando Alonso. He may have had an answer a few years ago referring to what used to be GP2. Oh, thanks everyone for the comments in the chat room. Encourage everyone to share your questions, opinions with us right here on the air. Here's something I found interesting, Nicole. I don't know if you saw this as well. You have a package now where the increasing of passing is very evident. And we saw that in the beginning of the Australian Grand Prix. We saw that in the sprint race. It makes it where the competition, I felt, is a little bit more intense in the midfield because we've had some great battles there. But one driver stood out amongst the 6 drivers that have scored points in both races. Those drivers are George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, and Oliver Behrman. Yes, the Haas driver, Oliver Behrman, has scored points. 7th place finish and an 8th place finish yesterday, so he got that 1 point. He starts 10th, and he is 7th in the driver's standings. Compared to his teammate Esteban Ocon, he's won an F1 race. He's been there a long time, 0 points. Other veterans, the Williams drivers, the struggling Aston Martin drivers, all with 0 points, along with Cadillac, Colapinto, and Isaac Hajar, which he just looking at the sprint race, he was able to say, hey, I'm going to give myself some points. I'm on the right path, but still looking for those points. How surprised are you by Oliver Behrman's impressive start, and can he score points today?
I am so impressed with Oliver Behrman. Ollie Behrman has done such an amazing job over the past couple of seasons. And I feel like the Haas cars and some of the cars who have been like mid to backfield teams over the past couple of years are finally getting their moment to truly shine with these new regulations, with the new tracks, and just the experience their drivers now have. And I think he is the perfect example of that. I am actually very confident that this weekend he can get points. We've seen him do very well in the past. We've seen Esteban Ocon do very well in the past. And I think the only thing that held Esteban up yesterday in the sprint race was the fact that we had so many retirements and the grid really bunched up near the end. And unfortunately, they're like, unless you had literally a Mercedes engine, you didn't really have anywhere to go. And so it's going to be really fun. It's going to be very interesting to see how some of these midfield teams do, because they're definitely a lot more like racy than they have been in the past. They're a lot more competitive, and it is going to be, I think, such a joy to see if they can actually keep up this competition long term throughout the season, or whether or not some of them kind of like fizzle out as upgrades slowly come.
The upgrades are going to make a huge difference. The one thing I feel really good about Oliver Behrman and the Haas team, I feel in the past, I've always seen Haas as, okay, they're that team, they're struggling. So if they have a good race, there might be a mistake in pit road because they're not used to that pressure, and a points finish is just worthy of celebration, especially when we're talking when Mick Schumacher was there and just things were not going right. They really were down in dumps, especially after the rich energy mess. But I feel confident this team could say, we could get the job done. We're expecting ourselves to get at least one car in the points, potentially two, because Esteban Ocon is very experienced, as you mentioned. So I do agree with you. I believe Behrman can get those points and extend the streak, which that'd be huge, a big boost of confidence for him, his young F1 career, and just makes me wonder if another team might look at picking him up someday. We know he all got in because of Ferrari when Carlos Sainz was sidelined. It would be great to see if he could go with another team. But if the rumors are true about Toyota potentially investing more into this team, because they already got that partnership with Toyota Gazoo Racing, watch out. That could be a good role for him, especially if Toyota goes all in. Darkness has fallen. Ferrari definitely needs to get rid of the small turbo for a better top speed in exchange for a slower start. Slower start, higher top speed. Thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, it's a really good thought in theory, but I wonder if their drivers will be able to handle that, because I think one thing that both Ferrari drivers currently do really well at is their race start. And I think that was pretty evident yesterday in the sprint of like how much that really matters. Kimi Antonelli stalled so badly that for a long time, no one thought he would even get any points yesterday. And I think that is going to be something that if Ferrari were to struggle with that, they would suffer very, very badly. I don't know if they would really know how to adapt their strategy correctly, because we do know, unfortunately, that Ferrari has struggled with their strategy calls in the past, especially on something as fragile as a race start. But I think if it would be an interesting experiment to see if that would really be in their favor.
Yeah, I feel, especially we have a race where it's wet conditions, or the Hungarian Grand Prix where you know passing is going to be very, very hard. Ferrari has the upper hand with this. Maybe at Spa-Francorchamps you could get away with a slower start because you're coming right up to that corner, but still I feel the Ferraris, you could just force yourself out wide on the inside on that first corner, get away, because even if you get a slow start, you're second or third in line, you're going to get a nice slipstream up the hill, a Rouge, Radion, that straightaway, fight for the lead. So very good questions. I encourage everyone to continue sharing your questions and opinions with us right here. Of course, we're in China. It's going to be very late Chinese Grand Prix. After here, it's off to Suzuka, Japan. And so far, with these new regulations, we're seeing passes on the outside of turn 1 here in Shanghai. We're seeing a lot of action up front. F1, they made a social media post of over 100 overtakes in Australia. Now you look at what we're going to have in Suzuka, because here we talk about the long straightaway and some of the complex corners, especially turn 1 leading to turn 2, 3, 4, and so on. You look at Suzuka, that first straight to the first corner, great opportunity. The S's, left, right, left, that's going to be a lot of fun. Then you have the hairpin under the bridge, which leads to the spoon curve, and then that leads to the straightaway to the mighty 130R, leading to that final chicane. I'm already excited about this. I know people are split on this regulation so far, but I know, like what Josh and Matt said, it's going to work. Could Suzuka beat the race? Or the competition is just so level across the field because of the way the course is laid out?
I think Suzuka, regardless, is going to be a very fun Grand Prix for fans and for drivers. We know it's a fan favorite amongst both categories, but I think it's going to be where the teams really kind of start to fall into a pecking order. This is going to be the third Grand Prix. They're going to have very clear team dynamics. They're going to have very clear instructions for how they would like the weekend to go and expectations to follow suit. And it's going to be very interesting, I think, to see how those dynamics kind of play out on track. I think it's going to be the first time where some of the teams feel very confident in their ability to make technical calls that are a little bit less of a guess, a little bit more consistent now that they have 2 races under their belt. And overall, I think I'm so excited to see how Suzuka is really going to play out, especially with the weather. We know if it rains, it can get very tricky. But we know if it's really sunny and very warm, that it's also just going to be an amazing, phenomenal Grand Prix where drivers are really excited to get out on track. And with now so few rookies on the grid as well, I think we can expect to see some of those reliability issues or some of those first start of the season kind of quirks to kind of work their way out already. I think it's going to be a really good Grand Prix all around.
I anticipate that will be it's always been one of my favorite Grand Prix, just to see what this package is going to bring. I think it's just going to be off the hook exciting, just edge of your seat. I know the way the racing has been very close and tight between everybody. We haven't seen, thankfully, contact and mistakes, but at that track, it's going to be intense. And if somebody's brave enough to make a pass on the outside leading to 130R, oh my gosh, that could be the overtake of the year. And we're only 3 races into the year.
100%.
In the chat room, any track that has long straights, Ferrari has a chance of winning. Mercedes race pace and straight line speed will not have a chance of winning. The straight line speed will always beat them. So I think, thinking of Suzuka, yeah, you got really 2 long straightaways, couple of corners, 130R, the first corner, spoon color. I feel like that's where it's going to be a little bit balanced with the Ferraris. But then the S's leading up to spoon curve, I think that's where Red Bull and McLaren could really step it up and start making some progress. Wide open. I know we talked a lot about those teams. One team we haven't even mentioned, but didn't exactly have a good sprint race for the Racing Bull teams. But Liam Lawson, he was able to at least get points, so he's on the board now. Do we anticipate them being point contenders today in the Grand Prix?
I would say possibly. Only I could see the Racing Bulls being a very big contender within the midfield teams, depending on reliability. If we see what we saw yesterday in the Audi and the Cadillac kind of struggling a little bit, I can definitely see the Racing Bulls taking full advantage of that and the VCARB team kind of sweeping that midfield, given the right conditions and circumstances. I definitely don't think we can count them out of the points like we could maybe last season. Right now, they have 2 drivers who are really hungry for everything. They see an opportunity. They know that this year is probably going to be one of their best as far as their opportunity to really make their way up into that upper midfield. And I think that they could potentially see this Grand Prix as the perfect door to kind of start making that path.
Perfect opportunity, perfect path to start making progress. That team, I think, has potential. I mean, they got great drivers. I don't see this is not the AlphaTauri or the Toro Rosso of the past. This is a team that they'll be point contenders. They'll be looking at opportunities to get the most points possible each and every race weekend. So I'm very excited to see their potential as a team going out there, getting the points. And for that young rookie, Limbad, what an effort. I know it makes sense what they did. Okay, you spun in the sprint race. We're not going to get points. Bring it in the garage. Let's focus on the Grand Prix. Smart move. We talked a little bit about the struggles of Aston Martin Cadillac. We got the comment in the chat room. But let's talk about them and Cadillac, because Aston Martin Cadillac, they're in the back of their grid. No surprise for everyone. I think that's safe to say. First year struggle for Cadillac, people are going to say, well, that's inevitable. Perez at least finished the race in Australia, got the laps, the data. Bottas, engine failure, was done for. Aston Martin, they're not a new team. They got Adrian Newey. They just got a really rough deal this year. Fernando dropped out. Lance Stroll was 15 laps down. First driver in, I believe, 60 years to be 15 laps down. That's not a record you want to. Don't want to be part of that club. I mean, gee whiz. Do you believe these are the two teams battling for not last place? And I'll even throw in, do you think Williams might be part of this battle?
I definitely think that Cadillac and Aston Martin, unfortunately, are going to be the bottom of the barrel this season. And I think Williams potentially has the possibility of turning it around, but it'll really depend. I think we all expected Cadillac to maybe not have the greatest of season, it being their first year in Formula One, just like we saw with Haas, who was the most recent of the new teams in F1 to kind of join. There's always a couple of years of struggle because you just have to learn how your team dynamic works. You have to learn how you're actually going to kind of design this amazing machinery and kind of get it all to fit together perfectly in order to survive in Formula One. I think Aston Martin is the one team that no one quite expected to be this low on the grid this early in the season. And I talked last week a little bit about how I think the myth of Adrian Newey really kind of construed some of that thinking. And at the end of the day, this really most likely comes down to the fact that they're just having a little bit of a hard time getting to grips with the new regulations and how that affects their car. They probably made a couple of choices, a couple of gambles that haven't really paid off. What will really matter is if they're able to switch that very quickly, at least before midway through the season, so they can kind of regain some of those points and move up a little bit in the grid. Williams, however, is, I think, the biggest unknown. They were pretty decent last year. I think everyone was pleasantly surprised and was really hopeful that this year would kind of be their season. I think we kind of expected almost Racing Bulls and the Williams team to kind of flip-flop, but obviously they haven't, and they're still really struggling. Though I do think out of the three teams that we've just talked about, they have the highest potential of really turning it around this season. But it will be an interesting time for them. I don't think it's going to be easy for any of those three teams.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy season. I think for Williams, it has to be a disappointment considering how last year went. Looking good with the podiums. Here comes the new regulation, the optimism of we can have a good year, and then it's just not working out. Just really unfortunate for Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, and all their fans that follow and, of course, are cheering them all. In the chat room, we have their comment from Darkness Has Fallen. If Kimi gets a great race, I'm definitely watching this race. But if he fumbles and loses a lot of places again, I'm turning off because Russell will automatically win. Fact or fiction, that statement, Nicole?
Oh, I would say fiction. I think the Mercedes absolutely have one of the most dominant cars, if not the most dominant car on the grid, but I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to be the winner of this Grand Prix. There's a lot more factors. There's a lot more unknowns, and I think early on in the season, we're a lot more likely to see other teams make small mistakes or have unfortunate accidents, and I think that will really be the biggest factor. Obviously Kimi is a fan favorite and we want to see him do well, and I think George is for like lack of better terms, he's been sometimes portrayed as this young rookie, this up and coming hero, and a villain. He's a little bit unsure about where his place is right now, but he's definitely gunning for that front row. And he's caused a lot of friction within the F1 community. So it'll be fun. It'll be entertaining to say the least.
I'm going to agree with you. I think fiction too, just because there's still the unpredictable nature. Russell has commented on the way Charles Leclerc aggressively races him at the beginning. We haven't seen contact impact the race between the leaders. That could happen here. Lewis Hamilton could be a contender. You get a safety car at the right time, wrong time. That makes or breaks a race. A lot of factors. So, I mean, I get it. It's going to be a 3 a.m. start time if you're on the East Coast, and depending where you are, you may be tempted to say, Russell got the win. I'm going to bed. I would say this is not the era of Max Verstappen championship dominant. Okay, he led the first lap. It's 3 a.m. I'm going to go to bed. I think you may want to stay up, check it out, but you just don't know until all the laps are completed and there's no overtime in F1. So you know when the race will end and the last opportunity to win. With that said, it's time for everyone's favorite game, time for everyone's opportunity to get on the leaderboard. This is the leaderboard before the sprint race. So there's been some people that have scored points already. I could tell you Matt and Kobe are up to 8 points each, tied for the lead. Right now, at the bottom of the standings, if you're at 0, no points, not on the leaderboard, you could get a correct guess. And since you're outside the top 10, it's in effect a bonus point for your first correct guess. So you could easily be in the top 10. We got plenty of racing left this weekend. We're going to share our Formula One picks. But don't forget, we have IndyCar. We have NASCAR. So comment in the chat room who you think is going to win the Formula One race, the IndyCar race, and the NASCAR Cup Series race. Try to get on the leaderboard, and we'll see how everything turns up on Grid Tonight Wednesday, the next time they have Pick Winner. Nicole, I know it didn't exactly work out, Kimi Antonelli, but now Kimi Antonelli is on the pole. Who are you going to go for winning at Shanghai, the Chinese Grand Prix?
I feel like I have to go with Kimi again. I'm just going to go with Kimi until he gets a win this season, quite frankly, Joe. I think that is going to be my strategy. It hasn't worked out so far, but who knows? Maybe this will be my season to finally get higher up in the standings at Grid Network and the pick a winner. But I think he's had a phenomenal start to the season, and I'm just very hopeful that this will be his Grand Prix. As we know, Shanghai can be kind of an unexpected favorite, kind of a shining gem in the rough of the many tracks we race on in Formula One, and I'm excited to see what he can bring.
I've done that strategy. I believe it was 2021. I just picked Kyle Larson. He got 10 wins, so he got me like 10 pick a winner points. So totally understand that strategy. And it's always frustrating. I'm going to go with George Russell, and that's the race. Kimi finally wins, and I'm just, what am I doing? For me, I was thinking Lewis Hamilton, just because that'd be a great story, and I think Ferrari could get it done. But I'm leaning towards Kimi Antonelli. I don't see why he won't. I mean, the start's going to be the make or break, but if he has a good start, I think he could bring the fight to George Russell. And really, Russell trying to fight off the two Ferraris if he's in second place and Kimi just tries to go, get away. I think it could be the difference maker, and I'm going to go with Kimi Antonelli as well for the Grand Prix. Let's check the chat room, see what other people have commented for their pick of winners. We got Adam. He's going with George Russell. Can't blame him. That'll be 4 consecutive wins, counting the sprint. For IndyCar, Pato O'Ward, Arlington, that'll be a huge win. NASCAR, Denny Hamlin. So that's a Toyota, a Chevy, and a Mercedes he's going with. And I believe I read this. Yep, if Kimi fumbles, Russell, darkness, you got to share your pick winner picks with us, as well as anyone in the chat room, Kid Latin, Avia, so that way you could try to get on the leaderboard, and encourage everyone to follow Grid Network across social media. at Grid Network TV and gridnetworktv.com. Learn more about the Grid Network, our team, and the articles, especially from Matthew Bro, who will be recapping the NASCAR race weekend. And a big thank you from Colin, the show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and Nico for investing in the Grid Network through Patreon. Link in the video description to get to our Patreon page to invest in us. Well, Nicole, that's everything we have for today. Any final thoughts as we go out the air and we get closer to the Chinese Grand Prix?
No final thoughts, just I guess thoughts and prayers for anyone who's staying up this late to watch Formula One. It's a little bit of a rough one this week, and it's going to be interesting, and I hope it's worth it.
Yeah, I hope it's going to be worth it. I know that's the advantage we have being in the West Coast is it's going to be a 11 p.m. start time, so it's not too bad, but still, if there's a red flag, some sort of delay, it's going to be a while. Darkness, Kimi wins, but he better not fumble the start. Hey, we convince you. So 3-3, we're all going to be in the Kimi train. Either we'll be full speed ahead or not gain points. But that's pick a winner. I think my final thoughts for the Chinese Grand Prix, I think it's going to be a fun race. I'm really curious to see once we get halfway through the race how the field spreads out. I think that could be a good indicator of where this regulations is, but I think Suzuka Japan is just going to throw everything out the window next weekend, and that will be our final Grid Live After Dark, the race that started all back in 2022 or 2023, one of those years. The first After Dark show was for Suzuka Japan. It's been a fun series, and we encourage everyone to subscribe so you don't miss our regular programs and the After Dark for Suzuka. For Nicole, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.